Good morning, everyone. My name is Jody Kilbasa, and I'm the director of the Virginia Film Festival, which is presented by the University of Virginia and the College of Graduate School of Arts and Sciences, and I'd like to welcome you to this morning's screening of David. And I would like to mention that this is part of a larger program of 8 wonderful films that we're screening called Jewish-Israeli Voices, that is sponsored by Congregation Beth Israel and the Embassy of Israel as well. And we're excited about this partnership. It's a partnership that we've been trying to grow for the last couple of years by screening some really, really very special and unique films and to bring in some filmmakers. And you know, I've got to say that today's film is a wonderful film. It's a very powerful film that speaks to family and different cultures that are very dissimilar and yet very similar in many ways. I love this film. I can't say enough about it. You're going to be joined by the director, Joel Fendelman, immediately following this, so I hope you'll stay around in a conversation moderated by Sean McCord. So we're grateful for both of them to make the journey down here. And I hope that you'll get out to see some more films, because we have a couple more films in this program today and a lot of wonderful films throughout the rest of the festival. So again, get out there, see some films. We have one more full day of films in front of us. And thanks so much for being here. Take care.
Hi, good afternoon. I can't see you, but I can hear you, so I assume you're there. My name is Sean McCord. I'm a volunteer, a writer, and a podcaster for the festival. And this is Joel. Joel, help us pronounce your last name.
Joel Fendelman, and it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you, everyone.
So I want to talk to you a bit about the genesis of the film. You directed the film. You also co-wrote it. I'd like to hear a bit about. We'd like to hear a bit about the origins of the story and what about the story called to you and made you want to make this film.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, for me, in making art or doing film, it's always working through stuff within myself. So, I have a lot of ideas on the table, and for this, it was looking at identity. And I co-wrote with a partner. Actually, he lives in Singapore, and we co-wrote the whole film via Skype. And he's an anthropologist, so we bring a whole different kind of angle to the film. But for me, it was looking at identity. I grew up Jewish and had bar mitzvah and reformed, and then kind of never looked back and had a lot of questions of what does it mean to be Jewish, what does it mean to be anything really. And then also living in New York City post 9/11 was really interested in. I remember being in the subway one day and looking at and seeing this religiously dressed Muslim man, and he had his bag with him, and I thought to myself, well, does he have a bomb, or is he a terrorist? And I just reflected on that for a few days. So there was a need of wanting to learn about this culture. It's so prevalent in our society today, and as far as our news, I mean, it's everything. So sort of bring that all together, and then taking a seed of an idea that I think we all can relate to, which is wanting to fit in. And as a 12-year-old boy, and a religiously dressed Muslim boy, and he just wants to fit in. I think we all can relate to that to some degree.
Well, one of the characters in the film speaks to that when David Daud asked her about how did you get by when you were different, and I think there are a number of young people in the audience today who came from our Sunday school classes, and I think we all remember being that age, and everyone feels that way, and it's just compounded. When you come from a culture that is a minority culture, so those are. Tell us about that story and that element, and how you integrated that into the film.
Yeah, well, I grew up in Miami, which is a very Hispanic city, and so in my school I was the minority in essence. There was half the school was Hispanic, the other third was black, and then I was the other. And so I can relate to a degree, not as much nearly as it's portrayed in the film, but I think it's something we all can relate to. And I mean, right now, in my view, being Arab Muslim in New York City post 9/11 is the alienated culture. But I believe in the last 100 years, we could pinpoint different ways of immigrants, and probably everyone has experienced that to some degree. And that's the irony of it, is they all go through the same thing, it's a cycle. It keeps replaying itself.
So, tell us about you as a filmmaker. How many films have you made? Is this your first feature?
It's my first fiction narrative feature. I did a documentary before that was looking at modernity and or keeping modernity or keeping tradition in modernity times through the eyes of kung fu masters, and a bunch of short films. Actually, this film started as a short film. I knew I was going to make a feature out of it, but when we were writing it, Patrick and I were like, oh, let's do a short first and just use Matassim, who plays Daud, and kind of test him out and see how that felt, and then go from there. So a year later, so the year before we made the short, and then a year later we made the feature.
And were you able to use some of the footage from the short in the feature, or did the boy
No.
grow up too much in that time?
Well, we weren't able to use some of the footage. We shot in different formats, and then there was other things, but one of the issues or reasons of doing the feature so fast was the boy, and I didn't want him to grow up because they're really cute, and then at 13 they start to get not so cute anymore.
It's for all you 13-year-olds. Well, tell us about the actor. How did you find him? What was it like working with him? You worked with a lot of kids, which is something experienced directors don't want to do, and this was your first feature.
I just got my voice back today, actually, from that. Honestly. But working with, so the two main kids, Matassim and Binyamin, are both non-actors. And in the writing of this film, and actually just this journey of learning about my own roots and learning about Islam, I spent a year and a half in Bay Ridge and a lot of time in Borough Park. And Bay Ridge and Borough Park are two side-by-side neighborhoods in Brooklyn. Bay Ridge being a very Muslim Palestinian neighborhood. You can go there and in certain parts you feel like you're in the Middle East, and go to Borough Park and everyone you see is wearing a black hat and walking, and you feel like you're in the middle of Jerusalem. And they're right next to each other. So in making this film, or actually in this year and a half, I was volunteering at an association in Bay Ridge. I was helping teach English to women, immigrant women, and then also running a youth group. And in running that youth group, Matassim, who plays Daud, was one of the kids there. And he just glowed. I mean, he never acted before. Maybe he did a school play, and just spoke with them and asked them if he wanted to be a part of it, and met with his parents and kind of did all that, and he did the short. He had this real natural talent. And then Binyamin, I was in Borough Park at a kosher cafe, and I was speaking with, I had advisors on each side, so I had a Jewish advisor, and we were speaking about the script and talking about Yoav, and this kid walks in with his father and his brother and little sister, and he just came from yeshiva. And I mean, he's modern Orthodox. He's pretty much playing himself, or a version of it. And he comes in, I'm like, that's kind of like Yoav right there. And they actually sit right behind us. And we're like, should we talk to him? Should we not talk to him? And then we're like, okay, let's talk to him. And we go, okay, 1, 2, 3, and we turn and we go, hi, your son kind of looks like the part for this film we're making. And then the father's like, oh, I love films like this. And then just a little relationship building from there. And so the two main kids, so there's the story of bringing them together, and there's also the behind-the-scenes story of bringing them together. He's modern Orthodox. Matassim's not as religious as we portray him in the film, but he is Muslim, and his parents are Palestinian. And so there's the behind-the-scenes story of bringing these kids together who have never met another Jew or a Muslim before, and just and they all want to be a part of it.
Yeah. Two elements that I particularly appreciated. One was that the grandfather's Quran that he lost could have, if we study Hitchcock, it was like the MacGuffin in the film. It was the element, it was the plot device that brought him in there. And I really appreciate the fact that, half an hour or so in the film, he gets it back. But he makes the choice to continue to go back. And because he's made friends with these boys. And I also appreciated that you had the B story about his sister. Because it would have been easy to just, you already had a good story about what Daud was going through. But by layering in this other element, it expanded it. So we cared about what was happening to everybody in the film. Talk a bit more about casting and the actors now. I had to leave during the roles to come back, so I didn't catch the name of the actor who plays the father, but I've certainly seen him before. The other faces I didn't recognize, the mother, the sister, some of the others. So, how many of your actors were professional actors, and how many were, people from the neighborhood?
Sure. So the father's played by Maz Jobrani, and he's an established comedian, and which you wouldn't really know from watching the film. But so he was on this Axis of Evil comedy tour, and he had his HBO special called Brown and Friendly. So so he goes to the Middle East and he sells out thousands of seats. He's very well known in the Arab community, and sort of getting his chops now in drama. He was an interpreter as far as a dramatic role, and so he's sort of our as far as the star power. He's sort of plays that role there, and then a lot of the other actors, the mother, the sister, they're played by this New York talent there's a lot of talent in New York, and we did the casting call, and they showed up. Many people showed up. We chose them, and really customized the role a little bit to them, and then the teacher who plays the yeshiva teacher, he's actually a yeshiva teacher. He's a principal now, but he used to be a yeshiva teacher. He's a principal of a yeshiva, and I put an ad by chance on an Orthodox, I think it's Orthodox Hasidic blog, saying he needed this, and he sent pictures of himself because he loves acting, loves to get back into it, and he did it like he did in college. And he showed up, and we just said, hey, teach us something. That was the casting process. And we're like, wow, that was pretty good. And so we casted him.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought it up because I'm actually marveled at his performance. Because I thought, he's a really good teacher. I don't think you could have gotten an actor to do that because it was so natural for him.
What's interesting, I've shown this to a number of Orthodox individuals, and they'll come up to me and say, man, everything was so authentic. He's like a teacher. He just really wasn't that authentic. I was like, he's a real teacher, actually. Like, wow, he's really good. I wish I had him.
And what about the rabbi?
And the rabbi is an actor. He actually grew up Hasidic, and as veered from that, and I don't think he's as observant right now, but he had that background so he understood a little bit, and he plays a lot of rabbis, I guess, because he keeps the beard. But so he had an understanding, which was nice, and it worked.
And did you have any difficulty filming in the temple and filming in the mosque, and especially when people there that you had to work with had to give you permission to film there? When did they see the script? Did they know what it was you were trying to do with the story?
I think spending the year and a half in the various communities and really relationship building, especially because a lot of them was filmed in the Muslim Arab community. I was just there. I was there a few days a week for a year and a half, and we filmed the short we filmed in the mosque. It just took months and months of going there and saying hello and telling them what we're doing, and they have to ask the right people. The prayer scene is just a real prayer scene. We go and I told Dawson, just pray, because he prays. So just pray and we'll film it. We'll try to film a lot of backs to people's heads. And they just allowed us to do it. And filming the market was just in the butcher. Just during the day, walk in there and just film the scene. Say, hey, can we use this aisle for an hour? And everyone was very supportive of the film in many ways. And I think it was there because I was there a lot. And I saw the short too, that helped.
And they must have been used to the camera because there were so many people there who weren't actors, who were just, people from the neighborhood, and they weren't looking at the camera.
Yeah.
This I noticed.
Yeah. Yeah, we were there, we became sort of an aspect of the community after a while, because we were there, like, there's those guys filming something again. Yeah. But I knew everyone, so I didn't know everyone, but I knew a number of people that you walk down and just say hello, and they're like, oh, you're making the film, oh, can I be in it? And that's how, there's many instances where we needed someone, we'd run down the street and say, hey, can you be an extra, or the lady's house we're going to use got sick, and we need a living room, and oh, you can use my cousin's friend's place, here's $100, and great. And that's how it works a lot, yeah.
Well, I'll get to the audience in a moment. I'm sure people out there have lots of questions. I just want to ask you one more thing about showing the film at festivals. You brought it to the Virginia Film Festival. Obviously, have you been showing it around, and who else has seen it?
Yeah, we first had a premiere in Brooklyn, and then where we won the audience award there. And then we went to Montreal and had a really nice screening there. We got the ecumenical prize. And then we were just in Rome, and so we're kind of bouncing around and going to St. Louis next week. And so it's been nice, and we've had screens with, where you'd see women with hijabs walking in, you see men with black hats walking in, you see all the above, and come and watch the film together. And it's been a nice experience. And sometimes I'm able, when we do the New York ones, I invite Mutassim and Benjamin to come, and they'll both come up on stage. And it's really incredible. And a lot of people immediately will be like, oh, there's Jew, Muslim, controversy, what was it like working together? And I remember Benjamin had this really nice response, really honest response. And someone asked him, so what was it like working with a Muslim or vice versa? And Benjamin said, I'm Orthodox and I go to yeshiva and I live in an Orthodox neighborhood and I really don't know anything else other than other Orthodox kids. So when I heard I was going to be working with a Muslim kid, frankly, I was pretty nervous and I didn't know what to think. But he said after the first day of working with Mutassim, I realized it was just like me and we're the same. And now we're Facebook friends. So, small steps.
All right, I don't think we have microphones, so what I'm going to do is, I'm going to do my best to see you. Raise your hands if you have questions. There we go. I will try to repeat your question for anyone who hasn't heard. So, who has a question for Joel? Right there.
Hi, nice job. One question I had on it, I was curious that none of the boys never questioned his not yarmulke.
The question is about, what do you call it, what he was wearing on his head?
Well, I mean, it's yarmulke. I've seen there's Jews and maybe more Sephardic Jews, and they wear a larger yarmulke.
Okay, so the question was, why didn't anybody question what he was wearing on his head?
But it was something that it was a subtlety because Muslims wear a certain covering too. It's a little bit longer, and then Jews a little bit shorter. So we're trying to play a balance that could go for both. But I've definitely seen, and as it was seen in the Shiva, these Sephardics is a little bit different, so they don't question that, and that's how we try to put it off.
More questions? Over there.
I have a dual, hi from Miami, by the way.
Hi.
Hi. I have a dual question. First is, what do you think the impact on community building between the two groups has been as a result of your film? And the other is, I'm left with a sense of a little bit of despair, I guess, because the warning of the father in the beginning of the son, that be careful, because the Jews don't like Arabs, plays itself out in the movie, where in the end he is rejected by the Jewish boys. So I'm wondering, I almost wanted a happy, ending, a happy resolution. I wonder how that affects the community building process.
So the question was, what impact has this film had on the community building process? And specifically the warning that the father gives at the beginning of the film about, be careful, they don't like Arabs, and how that has played out in the question as well.
Sure. Well, in the film, we hope, and it's kind of a logo we use for it, is to start a conversation. So we hope, as far as community building, that this film, and it has slowly been doing that we've been showing to interfaith communities, can be used as a vehicle to discuss and talk. And I mean, we'll show, the screens I've had that have been a lot of, or not even a lot, either one or the other or both, Muslims and Jews or different faiths, have said, oh wow, they really alike. And they'll see this. And sometimes someone doesn't know anything about what a Muslim does, or vice versa. They're like, oh, they kind of pray too, and they do that, and they both eat hummus, and it's amazing that not everyone knows this. And so in that way, it's whether it's for Jews or anyone, or for Muslims or for anyone, you get an insight, hopefully, into the lives of what these different conservative communities are doing, and it takes it away from the other. So it could be for Muslims, Jews, but also hopefully it could be for everyone to have kind of a look into that. And the second question, the beginning was
the statement the father made about be careful of Jews, they don't like Arabs, and I guess has has that affected, what was your question about that?
You're on the right track. Yeah, how has that affected community building? And, I don't know, it's a more equalized view of the truth of the matter.
Right, because it has kind of an ambivalent end. We don't know exactly, we don't know whether the boys are going to be able to stay friends or not.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the idea. Because it's really, when Patrick and I were writing this, it was really we're telling a story about friendship. And that's really what we kept coming back to. We don't want to get, I mean, it's political by nature, but we don't want to be overtly or directly political. It's a story about these two kids, and it's really where we tried to keep it. And what I always find fascinating is, I mean, they were just, like, when you're a kid, you don't really care, and it's all these adult intellectual ideas that start to change things. These ideas of identity. Oh, you're this way, so therefore, you know, you're not supposed to be this way. So, I mean, one thing we really tried to question or put in the film, in the end, is, like, why are they friends? And then, I mean, a lot of it, I interpreted as, oh, it's not because he lied to him, and that was why he was bothered. But it was also that age, when you're 12, 13, you're kind of just coming out of the innocence of childhood. You start having these ideas like, oh, you're not like me, so therefore, and so it was in that middle ground, that's what we're trying to play with. So yes, it was mostly, I'd like to think, maybe he felt betrayed, but also these other ideas were impending. And that's something in writing the film and putting it together, I still have questions about, these questions of identity, because in so many ways, identity of, oh, you're Jewish, this is great. I mean, I went to Israel for a month before making this film. I was like, man, I felt so much brotherhood I've never felt. It was the first time being there. It's like, it was great. And then when I'm in the Muslim communities, it was so much like family, and they go on Friday and they pray. So you're like me, therefore we create this community. But when you're not Jewish or part of that community, it separates more. So it's something I still question, like these ideas of identity and how there's the yin and the yang to it.
Okay, I've been given a single wrap-up. I want to ask you one last question. You talked a little bit about some of the festivals you brought this to. What are your immediate plans for this film? And what's your next project?
Yeah, so with this film, right now we're doing the festival circuit, and we're just reaching out to synagogues and things like that. So if anyone knows anyone who this could be a good point of topic or a point of screening, we're trying to bring different communities together, whether it's mosques and synagogues or anyone else. Ideally, this film can relate to any divergent community that may have similar feelings. So we're in the process of doing that. We're looking for distribution. We're kind of all those realms. And one thing to put out there, I think you guys all got ballots. If you did like the film, please fill it out. It does help. Things like that, having an award, things like that really help push the film out there. So then I'm writing another film that, interestingly enough, deals with similar identity issues. But I'm interested actually very much in more the girl's story, and I'm looking at that. So. Yeah. So please, yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Joel, and thank you all for being here, and I hope you all enjoy the rest of the Virginia Film Festival.
Thank you. And go to our website, like it's david-themovie.com. There's information, other cities are screening it, all that. Or if you're on Facebook, like us.